Jasmine Rocket stood at the dead center of the Supreme Court chamber, the bright lights sharpening the bold red of her suit and illuminating her face with an unmistakable clarity that showed she had not come here for compromise. Chief Justice John Roberts had studied her just seconds before he attempted to interrupt her, but before he could speak, the Congresswoman's strong, direct voice echoed through the marble walls. People in every corner of the courtroom looked up, startled by the sudden rise in her tone. Some whispered to one another, exchanging confused glances. The tension spread through the chamber like a tightening coil. It wasn't because she said anything improper. It was because she dared to say what almost no one expected to hear inside the Supreme Court. She also did not mention that she wasn't standing before only 9 justices. She was standing before hundreds of eyes watching her every move, knowing that today's hearing might become part of American history. Roberts, who had served as Chief Justice for 18 years, may have believed that his experience and his command of the court's traditions would allow him to control the moment, but today was different. Today he faced a woman who not only understood the law, but believed completely in the power and purpose of the Constitution. As Jasmine Rocket stepped toward the microphone, every footstep was measured and deliberate. Her red suit glowed sharply against the dark wood interior like a flame refusing to be dimmed. At 42, the Congresswoman from Dallas carried herself with the confidence of someone who had spent years as a civil rights attorney before entering politics. She was known for her direct, no-nonsense style, and that clarity quickly made her a rising voice on constitutional issues, especially voting rights, the very topic at the center of today's hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. And if the court permits, I stand before you today, not just as a Congresswoman, but as someone who has seen with her own eyes how the destruction of voting rights is stealing the voice of entire communities across Texas and across this nation. Today's case is not just about technical rules or procedural regulations. It is about whether we, as a country, still believe in the basic promise that every American deserves equal access to cast a valid vote. Roberts leaned slightly forward in his chair. His face remained composed, but his eyes narrowed just enough to reveal his real interest. He knew this case wasn't ordinary, and he knew this Congresswoman had not come to offer safe or ceremonial remarks. Williams versus Texas Election Commission was a technical case on the surface, focused on ID requirements and administrative barriers. But beneath the legal language was a truth that millions of Americans were arguing about, whether modern laws were being crafted to suppress the vote. Texas was at the center of that dispute. Jasmine opened her file, glanced at it once, then looked straight at Robert. Mr. Chief Justice, 10 years ago this nation was told that removing parts of the Voting Rights Act would not change anything. That balance would remain. But reality proved the opposite. Texas and many other states began implementing barriers that the act was designed to prevent. We are here today because the people whose voices are being restricted look to this court for protection. That is your duty. She presented the evidence with calm precision. She explained how the new voter ID rules impacted Black and Latino voters disproportionately. 23% of Black Texans lack the specific ID required under the new law, compared to just 4.7% of white Texans. No matter how it is framed, that disparity is not neutral. The chamber grew even quieter. People weren't just listening. They were feeling the weight of her words. Mr. Chief Justice, the Constitution does not give you permission to silence an elected representative who is speaking about voting rights. And this question is not simply about legal language. It is about the soul of American democracy. Several people in the gallery shifted, some surprised, others impressed. The camera panned slowly across the courtroom, capturing the atmosphere as if documenting a defining moment. The clerk announced, "The court recognizes Representative Rocket. You have 10 minutes." But those 10 minutes carried the weight of something far greater than a routine argument. She continued, "The law before you shows how administrative decisions are being prioritized at the cost of democracy. The 14th and 15th Amendments make it absolutely clear that no citizen can be denied the right to vote based on race, background, or economic standing. Yet Texas's policy creates obstacles that fall directly on communities already fighting to be heard." She added stories from her own work. Elderly women who lacked ID, college students whose campus IDs were rejected, workers who couldn't stand in long lines because their shifts would not allow it. She wove those stories together with statistics, constitutional principles, and legal precedents. Every sentence tightened the courtroom silent. "The right to vote is not just a right," she said. "It is the foundation that gives a government its legitimacy. When access to voting is restricted, democracy loses its meaning. A nation that calls itself the leader of the free world should not be restricting its own citizens' voices through barriers disguised as regulations." Roberts cleared his throat softly, as if preparing to intervene, but Jasmine's next argument was so direct and constitutionally grounded that he stopped. She explained that the court's duty is not limited to interpreting laws, but to ensuring that those interpretations defend the rights for which the Constitution was written. She cited historic rulings of the Supreme Court and then asked clearly, if protecting voting rights is not this court's responsibility, then what is? The courtroom held its breath. She delivered her conclusion with the same conviction she began with. This issue is not technical. technical. This is about whether we still believe in an America where every citizen's voice counts equally. If we walk away from that principle, the Constitution becomes just paper, and democracy becomes performance. Jasmine Rocket stepped back from the podium. Her eyes held the same determination they carried when she first walked in. People watched her not just as a speaker, but as someone who had reminded the court of its own purpose. Chief Justice Roberts closed the file in front of him. The air remained heavy, but one thing was unmistakably clear. Whatever the decision, history would remember this moment. And it would remember that a first-term Congresswoman stood in the Supreme Court and reminded the nation's highest judges of the very principles they were sworn to uphold.